Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Beyond the Veil, a podcast on psychic protection, spiritual hygiene, and navigating the ebbs and flows of the healing journey as you learn to master both your sovereign and shadow selves. My name is Lauren on Earth, your host, and this is a little bonus episode. I've been quite vocal about the election, and if you caught the last episode, I was talking about the energetics of both candidates and the political system as a whole. And I just felt there were some things that I wanted to share, some points that I wanted to make post election, now that we know who won, now that we've seen that really the majority of Americans were kind of all on the same page. If you've seen the map of votes by county, the one that is almost entirely red, that's where I'm getting this information from, where we're not as divided as we maybe thought we were. And maybe there were a lot of people that were voting red that weren't as vocal about it, that kind of did it in private. And I feel that as I've been seeing other people's points of view, a lot of people were afraid to tell loved ones and friends and family out of fear of how they will be perceived and judged. So I'm making this video post-election to explain why I think the Democratic Party lost from the lens of the average American that voted for Trump. Obviously, if you listen to my last podcast episode on the energetics of politics and of both candidates, you know I see something in the Democratic Party that is dark. It's connected to the war on consciousness, but obviously not every person sees it through that lens. But because the Democratic Party is of this energy right now at the root of who they are and what they stand for, people are seeing that energy reflected through them, through their actions, through the behaviors. And so that's what I'm going to get into today. Some mistakes that I feel they made and why so many people jump ship and switch parties. But again, I wouldn't even call it a mistake. It's just a reflection of them, right? So the Democratic Party, the whole campaign was run on fear mongering. And that's not to say that Republican campaigns in the past were not run on fear mongering. And maybe if you didn't listen to the last episode, I don't associate with any political party. I did not vote in this election. But for the most part, I stay out of it. But yeah, I felt a need to be vocal in this election because I feel like it was a very important turning point in this war on consciousness and winning this war on consciousness. And so I'm talking about right now what is being reflected through these parties, not who they have been in the past. So there's a lot of fear that they instilled in people, so much fear within that was projected by the party that they thought was going to save them. To me, this is textbook psychological warfare, what they did to people who are supporting them, which to me is proof right there that they don't actually care about you. They were doing what they felt was necessary to win this election, even if it meant creating chaos and conflict within those that are on their side. They made people so afraid of a non-real reality to the point where people were harming themselves and some even taking their lives. And I'm going to be as straightforward and honest as possible with this. This is what I believe the average American is thinking. Again, I'm not speaking to every single person in the Democratic Party. I have a lot of friends who are more left, who are good people, who are just not in this world in terms of spirituality and down the rabbit hole and kind of seeing this for what it is. And I understand that they really think and believe that, Kamala was a better choice and they're good people. So if this is you, like, I'm not speaking and making assumptions on everyone. This is just the party as a whole. And I really encourage you to watch this whole thing because after that, I have this theory about, why Trump is the better candidate. And it's not the reason you might think. a message that was shared with me back in 2016 when he won. So I really encourage you to stay with me through this whole thing. My intention is to share all of this with love and as neutral as possible. And I want to start with someone in my group chat asked me how could Trump possibly be a light worker? And I love that question. And it's 11/11. And so I want to answer it here. A light worker sheds light on darkness. And that's what Trump is doing. Whether he's a good person or not, whether he has made mistakes in the past or not, whatever he does in this term, he is going to be shedding light on darkness. And I don't believe that this race was close at all. The majority of Americans voted for Trump and are seeing something that those who voted blue are not seeing. And I believe they're not seeing it because of manipulation and the psychological warfare. So instead of the Democratic Party and again, I understand that, or not the Democratic Party, but the people that voted for the Democratic Party, I understand why it's hard for them to do that. This is mind control. But instead of them listening to the people that voted differently as to what they are seeing and why, they're putting up a wall, they're deflecting, and they're projecting. And I understand that they are upset, emotional, and acting on that emotion. Part of that is at the fault of the Democratic Party and the psychological warfare and the mind control that was used during this election, right? We're in the middle of a war. It is a war that we cannot see. It's a spiritual war. So, but I also don't believe that that is an excuse because we are responsible for ourselves. We all have emotions. We all go through stuff, and we all need to learn how to not project that pain outward by hurting other people because we are hurt. The reactions, the mean comments, it's not okay. I understand why you're upset, but it's not okay. I think we all just need to agree insulting each other and insulting the intelligence of someone you don't agree with is pretty ugly behavior. I would love if we could stop doing that. And if we can work on that over the next 4 years, who cares who's in office? We will be so much better off. Doesn't matter if Kamala's in office, if Trump is in office, if we can learn to be kinder to each other and to understand each other and to let the ego go so we can allow for these other perspectives to come in, we will be so much more healed regardless of what is going on in these political systems that we know are garbage anyway. So every time I saw a Democrat ask what rights are actually being taken away, or every time I saw someone ask a Democrat what rights were actually being taken away, their response was not to answer the question, but to call that person either uneducated or racist or homophobic or a woman hater. And this is exactly why I left the Democratic Party in 2016. And I left when Trump was in office, and I was not a fan of him. I cried. The day after the election was a very hard day for me. And I'll get to that in a little bit. And I left the party during that election, and it had nothing to do with Trump. I was not a fan of him, but I also tried, or I thought I was leaving politics altogether for a while, really up until this election, because it was, like I said, such an important one for the war on consciousness. But I have family members who are very far left. And even when I was also on the left, I struggled with them because I felt this prestige, this I'm better than you type of attitude. And I think a lot of people are seeing that and are over it. People don't want to be around that. It's the superiority complex that many Democrats have. And I think that the collective is kind of waking up to the fact that no, that doesn't feel good. And I say this with love, but you guys are demanding equality, but aren't embodying that yourself. We need to let go of the arrogance. And I really encourage every Democrat to ask themselves this question without feeling any shame or guilt about it or yourself if the answer to this is yes. And I'm speaking about me someone who does not buy into either political party. And I'm going to speak for the majority of Americans who did vote red, because I feel like, just like I have friends who are on the left, most of the people who did vote red are good, honest, hardworking people, and we will always accept you. You are always welcome. And you're not welcome over to the Republican Party. It's you're welcome over to this. There's no party yet, but maybe we will be forming one where we just want better for everyone. And we just want you to reflect, just as we have done over the last several years, right? As I was talking in the last episode about how we've been down this rabbit hole and letting our reality crumble and shatter, and going through the process of what that is, because it's difficult. And I just need to say this: not everyone who voted for Trump is a racist, sexist, homophobic asshole. There are a small percentage of people who voted red that are, yes. And I do feel that this is the stereotype of these parties, but the majority are not, and these comments need to stop. I feel like the stereotype of blue is status and higher education and money, and this I'm better than you, while red is this uneducated blue collar idiots in the middle of the country with blah blah blah, which is neither of those. I mean, there's truth to it, but I think we need to start detaching from that, because that is how this whole system is going to crumble to begin with. And I feel like my demographic on paper would fall more into blue stereotype here. But I'm not about exclusivity and judgment based off the way you look, where you live, what you do, how much money you make. That's why I left New York City and why I got so far away from the Northeast to begin with, because that was never my vibe. And I feel like what the Red Party has turned into, not so much these hillbillies that are missing teeth and don't have an education, but I feel like it's the average American who just wants to live peacefully. So we need to leave those judgments across the board. I'm talking to everyone in the past, because times are changing. So Kamala's entire campaign was based on fear mongering, and one of her downfalls was her marketing. She tried to win us over with Beyonce and TikTok trends while most of Americans cannot afford groceries. It kind of makes us feel like she thinks we're idiots and would buy into this. And maybe that has worked in the past with this goo goo gaga over celebrities. But what does this do for us? We want to know what you're going to do to make this country better. She couldn't do that. She couldn't speak on that. She had Beyonce and Meg the Stallion twerking at her rallies. She went on a sex podcast, Call Her Daddy, which is so unserious, right after Hurricane Helene. That's where she should have been. If she poured her energy into making sure the Americans who just lost everything are okay and showed us that she is for the people, she would have won. But she didn't do that. Her priorities were all wrong. And I believe they were wrong, not because of bad marketing team, but because we're seeing who she is and who they are. So what makes you think that they will automatically shift when she takes office? If her priorities were out of order during her campaign, they're going to continue to be out of order in office. It would be delusion to think otherwise. To witness a person showing you who they are through their actions over and over and over, but thinking they will do something different. And this also is part of the psychological warfare and the psychological damage. I also feel me and a lot of other people preyed on women's emotions around rights and abortion, knowing that there is nothing she could do about it. She's smart. She's been in politics her whole career. She knows this. And she continued to let this be her leading reason. And she was lying. If she truly cared about women, she'd keep men out of their bathrooms and maybe offer to make other things better, like maternity leave and healthcare, anything else. Trump has no plans to do anything about abortion. He made a statement about this as well a couple days ago. It is in the hands of the states. And that is a lot better than it being in the hands of the federal government. So if you don't like your state laws, vote in the state elections. And also, I saw a lot of people crying over IVF and feeling like they're not going to be able to have babies because he's going to take away IVF. And actually, what he said was he's trying to make IVF more affordable and covered by insurance. Abortion was not even close to the main issue in this election. And this is coming from a woman who has had an abortion. So clearly, I am pro choice. And I think that the choice to do this is something that we deserve. There are so many reasons why people have abortions, and to take it away is disastrous. But it is just not the leading issue in today's world. There are worse things happening right now in this country, and it does not make me insensitive to say that. It's just the truth. And if abortion is the most important issue to you, you are really disconnected from reality or are being manipulated by this party to believe that. I also saw this video of a doctor who performed about 1,200 abortions in his career, and he said only about 5 or 6 of them were due to health issues and complications, and the rest were perfectly healthy women and babies. And I was one of those, okay? I will admit to that. Perfectly healthy woman, perfectly healthy baby. I didn't share this video because he says, I killed X amount of children, and I just don't agree with that. And I think the majority of people who voted red are in agreement with me, where it's not that we're screaming about, you're killing your child. We understand there are reasons why this needs to happen. So I don't agree with that. I don't think we should be shaming women. If I went ahead with my pregnancy when I was 23, I would just not be in a good place because, and, I went to see, I know I've talked about this before, but years later, I went to see a shaman and it came up and she was like, you haven't let something go, blah, blah, blah. And she brought it up and she said to me, that baby was never supposed to be born. And what it was doing was opening this portal in my womb. Um, and and there was a spiritual meaning behind it, and I didn't understand that at the time. But then a year later, who do I meet? I meet my ex-mentor, and I go on this insane journey of healing and this attack on my womb. And the whole reason that I was able to purge all this and go through this process was because of this soul that came in and opened that up for me. And so with that said, I don't think we should be shaming women because we don't know the reasons why women do what they do. And I think that, we should continue to make this more accessible, but also, it's just not the biggest thing right now. People can't afford basic necessities, and we need to focus on what takes priority, not dismiss it entirely, but just what takes priority. Another issue, a big issue that why a lot of people voted red is because they are um, the Biden administration is letting illegal immigrants across the border, many of which have a criminal background. So those who voted for Trump are not anti-immigration or anti-foreigners or hateful or spiteful racists. We want them to just simply go through a legal process so they are vetted. Come on over, but you do need to be documented. It's just a safety issue. And not to mention, they are spending millions on putting them up in furnished apartments when your own citizens can't afford to pay rent. That's an issue. It's not, does that have anything to do with us being hateful toward other people from other countries wanting to make a life here? That is perfectly okay. The issue is safety, and the issue is you need to take care of your own people before you start taking care of those from other countries. I personally feel like they were doing this not to help people from other countries, but there's a whole other plan, a whole other thing that they're trying to do with this. And I'm not going to get into it now. Maybe it won't be an issue anymore, but they have this agenda, and that's why they're doing it. So when it comes to the trans community, the issue is not with trans people. I know what Trump has said about, like, I listened to it the other day where he was saying, like, a lot of people believe there are two genders and that's it. And, I don't really have a comment on that because I feel that, yes, we embody both, both the masculine and feminine. And the farther you travel in terms of dimension and density, the higher up you go, the less you are of just one or the other, and the more androgynous you are. So I understand why some people feel that they are either, female or male, but kind of somewhere in between. And so that's kind of where I am with this. I have more thoughts on it that I'm just not really quite ready to share as publicly. But I feel like, yeah, there are people who don't understand the transgender path. They believe in two genders. I just feel like there are some people too that are very awake, but they really truly believe that, and I feel like there is a reason that they believe that, and I would like to understand it. But I'm just highlighting here that, yeah, there are people that think that way, but there are a lot of other people who accept you and respect you, and it doesn't matter who you are and what you are or what you identify as. That's not the issue here. The issue with this for the majority of people is allowing children to undergo gender reconstructive surgery. That's it. This is a permanent change with someone whose brain is nowhere near being fully developed, and that is what we're not okay with, and I'm on board with this. If a child thinks they are of another gender, continue to support that child, change their name, change their clothes, support them in all the ways that they need, but just wait a little bit longer to undergo a permanent surgery that also can, have a lot of complications. People in the LGBTQ community are thinking that they won't be able to marry each other. And I feel so sad because they're in so much pain, but no one is threatening your rights there. Like, yes, there are people who still don't support you, but that's not everyone who voted red. And that is really important to understand. We did, we voted red, and I'm speaking we, I know I didn't vote, but if I did, you know what my vote would have been. There's a higher reason I did not vote. I was guided not to, and I will talk about that in a little bit. But the people that wanted Trump in office did so because we want more rights back for everyone, not just specific groups. Which for the Democratic Party, people in that party want more rights for specific groups and not for all. I promise you, if something like this were to ever happen, if your rights really were to be in question, there will be an uproar. We will not stand for that. We will not be on board with that. I promise you that. We are all on the same team. And many Democrats are saying that Trump has said many hurtful things in the past. Yeah, okay, not even saying that he did, he has. And I do not deny that. And that is why I maybe could not, cast my vote for him. But the Democrats right now are doing the exact same thing, almost like worse, because they're wishing death on people. They're wishing for more natural disasters in red states. So, what makes you any better than him? Liberal women have told me to shut my mouth, to hush, sis, that because I didn't vote, I have no right to speak, along with other things like being uneducated and an idiot and so on. They're not wanting their rights taken away, but they are telling me that I have no right to speak. Do you not see the hypocrisy? They are being rude and disrespectful to other women who simply hold another belief. I thought we were pro women. I thought we were pro women's rights. And because they didn't get their way, they're now shaming other women. Isn't that why you're mad at Trump? Then there are women in Iran and Afghanistan who are actually losing their rights. You have to remember, we are all one. One is hurting like this. We are all hurting like this. In Iran, they are trying to change the legal age to marry to 9 years old. And in Afghanistan, it's now illegal for women to hear another woman's voice out in public. So if you really are concerned about women's rights, you should be concerned about this, and you should be speaking up, not just when it comes to you. So another reason I think Kamala lost is because of who she chose for VP. I don't know about you, but Tim Waltz and his wife, I can't look in their eyes. Energetically, I know we're not really getting into this here, but I think a lot of other people feel uncomfortable around him. And he was also accused of grooming an SA of young boys when he was a high school teacher while this whole campaign was happening. And that was hushed. They did a really good job of keeping that under the radar, but that was happening. I just don't believe that your children are safer with Kamala in office. It appears that way. And that's what's so backwards about this. It's all illusion. She also rebuked Jesus at her rally. So she was showing us she's anti-Jesus. And I feel like this was pretty huge for the Christian community. She told us exactly who she was working for in that moment when someone said something, Jesus Christ, and she said, "Oh, buddy, you're at the wrong rally. That rally's down the street." When someone tells you who they are, listen. So the Democrats lost, in my opinion, because of their energy, their attitude, their inability to listen and read the room, and the poor choices and partnerships that Kamala made. Instead of explaining her policies, she focused on pop culture and thinking she could kind of brainwash with media, celebrities, and fear. And I think that also shows that she, is just not in tune with the average. Well, maybe, okay, maybe she's not in tune with the average American. I just don't think she cares. So that's that. The issues they were pushing were just not the biggest and most problematic things that are happening in this country. And that is what the majority of people care about. Now, I want to share a perspective with you that might help. That was shared with me when I was going through this process that a lot of Democrats are going through right now back in 2016. So, like I said, I cried. And I thought that we were going to regress as a nation. I thought, how can I possibly believe in God if he'd allow this to happen? And as time went by, my connection to the divine grew. This was when my psychic abilities were coming online, right at the start of end of 2015. And I was told by spirit that it may not make sense why, but the current president is the better option for this country. It is the higher timeline. And I could not understand how. But as I continued to observe and I noticed his presence and what he was saying and the controversy that he was stirring up, it was all to act as a mirror and invoke this anger and emotion in us so that we start waking up to the oppression of our systems. And this is exactly what happened 4 years later as 2020 hit. And what followed was a mass spiritual awakening and evolution of consciousness. And looking back, I was able to see how this really was the best thing for us. But I had a hard time getting past certain qualities and beliefs of his and his behaviors and all of that. And I realized maybe he's not empowered to be a thoughtful leader or the savior. Maybe he was empowered to shake things up. And unfortunately, it was done in a way that hurt a lot of people. And the sad thing is, though, there are so many casualties in this war on consciousness. The Democrats' hands are not clean either. People are getting hurt in this process, and people are losing their lives in this process, in this war on consciousness. I mean, there were a lot of suicides the days after the election, and those suicides are not on the hands of Trump. They are on the hands of Kamala and the Democratic Party for this fear mongering and making them believe that they were truly, truly in danger. were and still are under such deep mind control that back then it took something this extreme and dramatic to get us to pay attention. That's why I feel like we're not ready for a thoughtful leader yet. We need someone who's going to trigger and who's going to dig this stuff up, this dark stuff up, right? We're in our Pluto return as a country. And this is just how the unraveling has played out. And we have to just accept it because, after all, it is a manifestation of our collective consciousness and our collective mind. Mass awakening is messy, 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 messy. And you guys who are in that journey right now know that. And it's going to be messy internally and externally. And it won't make logical sense. I wish it could just be rainbows and fairies from here on out, but that's just not going to happen. Everything hidden must come to light before the return of heaven on earth. What is beneath the surface is ugly. We know what's going on with Diddy. We know what's going on with the pedo rings. That's real. And it's ugly. And it's going to get ugly at times because we need to bring this to surface. And we just need to prepare and brace ourselves to deal with it and not run from it. And once we do, we surrender to it, we play the game, we purge it out, our quality of life is going to improve. And also back then, Hillary Clinton having that power was concerning to me. I knew about Pizzagate. I was down the rabbit hole by this point. I knew about the emails. I saw the danger, but I couldn't see it in the same way that I do now because it's like there was this veil over me. And I'm learning that there are layers to the rabbit hole. And yeah, there was still this slight veil over me where I knew what Hillary was doing, but like at the same time, there was something blocking me from really seeing it clearly. So what I'm saying is I understand why people are turning a blind eye to the Diddy and Kamala connection, but I'll tell you from experience, it's programming. It's programming. You are programmed. And maybe, allegedly, possibly some black magic from our head witch, Queen Bee. Back then, the message ultimately was to trust the process. There is a reason Trump is in office. And maybe it's to keep stirring stuff up that is in our highest good to surface, even if it's not logical or linear or pleasant. And for all of those who are upset, I understand because I was there in 2016, but I'm passing along the message that Source gave to me at that time. Trust the process. The thing too is Trump is also trying to give more power to the states and take it away from the federal government. And maybe, just throwing out a theory here, but maybe this is a step that we need to take first, that there is a plan for these systems to come down. And we don't know how or what that will look like. We'll witness it unfolding before us and we'll, be guided on how we're all meant to play a part in this. But isn't it possible that maybe it starts with the power falling out of the hands of the federal government? Trust the process. We don't know what lies ahead. But I will say, I do feel we jumped a timeline and a battle was won by the light. And as you know, in spiritual warfare, for those involved in the battles, we win some, we lose some. You might have heard Kamala's speech where she said, this cryptic message of we'll keep fighting until we win. A lot of people think she's talking about, there's that Trump is not actually going to take office, that Kamala is going to win, there's something's going to happen, da da da. It's possible. I don't really have a comment on that. I feel that, maybe something will happen in a few weeks. But maybe she's talking about the war on consciousness itself, that they're going to win in the end. But, the light won the battle and the light wins the war. But we know they're not going to stop trying until it's over. Because ultimately they lost, but they're still trying, So again, like I said, I didn't vote. I'm being honest. If I did, you know who it would have been for. But my ballot came late. I kept trying to go to my mailbox. It was like I was stopped in my tracks. It was kind of crazy. And I kept hearing the message, your vote doesn't matter. And kind of sinister, but I'm in Colorado. Kamala won Colorado by a lot. So, I'm going to continue to keep my energy out of the voting system and out of the political party in that way, and just continue to educate on what I'm seeing within this system and the work that I'm doing energetically to support the crumbling of these systems. Because again, it's not red or blue, it's somewhere in the middle, and we need to try to figure out how to get there and how to have a candidate who is also more in the middle with everything. Each candidate has their own agenda. And again, I stand by what I said on the podcast. Kamala does not have an intention to better humanity. And maybe Trump does through his own self serving reasons, but it's better than no progress at all. I don't believe either party is going to save us. Ultimately, we save ourselves. And that's what happens when we come together as one, and what the whole point of this podcast episode is, where we need to just be kinder to each other. The division is palpable, and division lowers consciousness. So I hope we can all settle into this new normal, whatever happens, over these next few months. Work on that trust, process our emotions, and come back together to continue to work toward what we all want, which is a better, brighter, and healthier life. And I hope we can all agree and realize that we're in agreement on a lot more than what we think. We truly all want the same thing, but the work begins within. And if everyone is responsible for their own inner world and really focus there over the next 4 years, I think we could make huge progress together, and we keep purging out the system. Democrats, you guys have to purge this AI, this psychological warfare, this mind control. And just have that be your focus of purging the system out of your being. And maybe you still do choose to stay with the Democratic Party. Maybe things change. Maybe you're out of the system entirely. It doesn't matter what is to come on the other side of it. It's more so like purging out the distortion and all that is not you and not true, and just see where it leads you. From what I've seen with this election, the people are really uniting. And imagine what we can do if we all come together to create positive change in our world. And that light and shift in the consciousness will be forced to reflect through our government systems. Because as within, so without, as above, so below. So we create the change from within, the internal, and our government systems, the external, will be forced to change to reflect that. It's as simple as that. So I don't know how things are going to play out with Trump. I've seen a lot of theories of like the dark side to MAGA. I've seen people say that, Kamala is going to win ultimately in the end. I think we just need to let go a little bit, and remember that he is playing a role just as many of us are in this war on consciousness. And sometimes that role is being a trigger. And, we keep an eye on it, not to blindly trust him, but to trust God and trust the process. And I'll be watching him. I'll be watching Elon Musk, especially because I'm like, what is that relationship? I don't trust that man at all. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's, I guess done now. We'll see. I don't know. But that's just what I wanted to share.